the champagne glass shattered against marble, crystal fragments catching light like fallen stars, and in that silence before the gasps began, I understood that some promises were never meant for me. My fiancé stood frozen at the altar, his hand still outstretched toward a woman who wasn't his bride. The woman who wasn't me. Her name was Victoria, and she was crying, not tears of joy, but something darker, more possessive. She'd just told everyone assembled in the cathedral that she was carrying his child. I should have screamed. I should have run. Instead, I stood perfectly still in my wedding gown, 24 years old, watching my life collapse with the strange calm of someone who had already died inside. "Catherine, I can explain." Adrian's voice cracked across the sudden murmurs. But I was already turning away, my veil catching the afternoon light one last time. The accident happened 3 hours later. My car, the rain, a truck that shouldn't have run the red light. The pain was brief. The darkness that followed wasn't. I was 13 when I first met Adrian Westbrook. He was 16, already handsome in that careless way rich boys are, visiting my father's modest accounting office with his father. The Westbrooks owned half the city's real estate. My family owned nothing but dreams of stability. "You'll marry into that family one day," my mother had whispered after they left, her eyes glittering with an ambition that had nothing to do with my happiness. "You'll secure our future." I didn't understand then that I was being groomed as a sacrifice. By 17, I was dating Adrian. Or rather, I was allowed to exist in his orbit. He was charming, attentive in public, and my parents glowed with pride. Behind closed doors, he was different, distant, always checking his phone, always somewhere else in his mind. "You're too serious, Catherine," he'd say when I asked about our future. "Learn to be fun." So, I tried. I moulded myself into whatever he wanted. I majored in art history because he liked cultured women. I wore the clothes his mother approved of. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I became a performance of femininity designed to secure a future that was never truly mine. Victoria appeared in our lives when I was 22. She was Adrian's childhood friend. Beautiful, spontaneous, everything I'd been taught not to be. She called him at odd hours. She showed up at his apartment unannounced, and when I expressed concern, I was labelled jealous, insecure, controlling. "You're being paranoid," Adrian would say, his voice edged with irritation. "Vic is like a sister to me." I believed him because I'd invested 6 years in believing him. Because my parents had already started planning the wedding. Because leaving would mean admitting I'd wasted my entire youth on a man who saw me as a placeholder. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Cancelled dates, forgotten anniversaries, the way he'd check his phone during dinner, smiling at messages he wouldn't share, the perfume on his collar that wasn't mine, the late nights at the office that my friend saw him leaving from with Victoria on his arm. But I said nothing. I planned the wedding. I smiled for the engagement photos. I let my mother pick out china patterns while my soul slowly suffocated. Then came the wedding day, the cathedral, the shattered glass, Victoria's announcement, Adrian's face torn between panic and something that looked almost like relief. "I love her," he'd finally said, the words quieter than the murmurs around us. "I'm sorry, Catherine. I thought I could go through with it, but he loved her more, had always loved her more. I was just the suitable choice, the one his parents approved of, the one who would never make waves or demands or question where he was at 2 a.m. I didn't get to respond. I just walked away, got in my car and drove into the rain, into death, into darkness, into rebirth. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, 17 years old again, with sunlight streaming through curtains I'd donated to charity 7 years ago, in what had been my future. My phone, the old model I'd forgotten existed, buzzed with a text from Adrian. "Dinner Friday. Want to talk about us?" My hands didn't shake. my heart didn't race. I felt nothing but a crystalline clarity that comes only from living through your own destruction once already. I knew everything now. Every manipulation, every lie, every moment he'd chosen her while keeping me on a leash of false promises. I knew how it ended, with me in a wedding dress, humiliated, then dead. This time would be different. This time, I would not be the girl who waited, who accommodated, who sacrificed herself on the altar of other people's expectations. I deleted Adrian's text without responding. "Catherine," my mother's voice carried up the stairs, sugar-sweet with ambition. "Don't forget, the Westbrooks are coming for dinner next week. Wear something pretty." I looked at my reflection, 17, unbroken, still full of possibility. In my first life, I'd let them shape me. This time, I would forge myself. "I'm not going to be home for dinner," I called back, and the silence that followed was delicious. My transformation was surgical in its precision. I stopped answering Adrian's calls. When he showed up at my school, confused by my sudden unavailability, I was polite but distant. "I don't think we should date," I told him simply, watching his face cycle through surprise, confusion, then irritation. "Is this because of what your friend said? Catherine, you're being childish." "No," I interrupted, my voice calm as still water. "I'm being smart." His eyes narrowed, unused to resistance from me. "Your parents won't like this." "Then they'll have to be disappointed." I walked away from him in the school parking lot, and it felt like shedding a skin I'd never chosen to wear. My parents were, predictably, furious. My mother cried. My father threatened. They'd built their retirement plans around my marriage to the Westbrook fortune, and I was dismantling their dreams with every unanswered message from Adrian. "You're throwing away your future!" my mother shrieked during one particularly volatile dinner. "No," I said quietly. "I'm choosing it for the first time." I moved out at 18, the moment I graduated. I worked 3 jobs while attending community college, then transferred to a university 3 states away. I cut contact with my parents. I blocked Adrian on everything. I erased that life like it was a rough draft I'd never meant to keep. But I kept track of them. From a distance, I watched. Adrian, confused and slightly wounded in his pride, eventually reconnected with Victoria. They started dating publicly within a year of my disappearance. His parents disapproved. She was fun, not suitable, too spontaneous for their refined taste. They would learn to live with their disappointment. I had. 5 years passed. I graduated with degrees in business and finance. I built a small investment firm from nothing, spending nights in a studio apartment, living on coffee and determination. I was 23 and successful in a way that had nothing to do with who I'd married or which family I'd secured. I was also alone, but alone felt like freedom after years of being someone's obligation. Then I received the invitation, Adrian Westbrook and Victoria Chen's engagement party. Someone from my old life had tracked me down, probably out of morbid curiosity. The invitation was cream-coloured, expensive, embossed with their intertwined initials. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I RSVP'd yes. The party was at the Westbrook estate, the same venue where my wedding would have been held in my first life. I arrived in a black dress that cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month, my success worn like armour. Adrian didn't recognise me at first. I'd changed, sharper, harder, no longer soft with accommodation. When he finally realised who I was, his champagne flute froze halfway to his lips. "Catherine?" "Hello, Adrian." He looked older, though we were the same age. Success had been handed to him, and it showed in the softness around his eyes, the ease with which he moved through the party. He'd never had to fight for anything. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, Victoria appearing at his elbow like a beautiful, clingy vine. She looked at me with curiosity, not recognition. Why would she? In this timeline, I'd left before becoming a threat. I wanted to congratulate you both, I said smoothly. Forever is a long time. I hope you're ready for it. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Confusion, maybe memory of promises he'd once made to a different girl in a different life. Catherine, we should talk about what happened back then. Nothing happened, I said. You wanted something I couldn't give you. I'm glad you found it. I meant every word. In this life, I'd never given him the chance to destroy me. He was just a boy I'd almost known, now marrying someone else. The wedding wouldn't end in public humiliation, because I wouldn't be the bride. Victoria could have the privilege of learning what his promises were worth. But as I moved through the party, I began to notice things. The way Victoria hung on his arm was something that looked like desperation. The way Adrian's eyes followed other women, that same distracted quality I'd once mistaken for depth. The way his mother, Mrs. Westbrook, looked at Victoria with barely concealed disdain. They were repeating the pattern, just with different players. 6 months after the engagement party, my investment firm landed a major client, Westbrook Real Estate. It was random, cosmic irony at its finest. I considered refusing, then decided against it. Business was business, and I was curious. The contract meant regular meetings with Adrian. He was uncomfortable at first, then overly friendly, as if we'd been old friends instead of almost lovers, from a timeline that no longer existed. You've done well for yourself, he said during one meeting, his admiration genuine. I always knew you were smart. No, you didn't, I replied without heat. You thought I was suitable. He flinched. Catherine, back then, I was young, stupid. I didn't appreciate It doesn't matter. I cut him off. That was years ago. We are different people now. But we weren't. Not really. He was still the same man who'd make promises he didn't intend to keep. And I could see it happening in real time. His wedding to Victoria had been postponed twice. Just logistics, he'd explained to business partners. But I'd seen the strain in Victoria's smile at events, heard the rumours of fights, of his late nights at the office that weren't actually at the office. History was repeating itself, and I was watching from a safe distance, no longer the casualty. Then came the night Adrian called me at 11 p.m, drunk, from a hotel bar. I made a mistake, he slurred into the phone. Victoria's pregnant, but I don't. Catherine, I should have chosen you. You understood me. I hung up without responding. He didn't call back. The wedding, their wedding, was scheduled for a Saturday in June. I wasn't invited this time, which felt appropriate. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when my assistant interrupted. There's someone here to see you. Victoria Chen. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's insistent. Victoria looked different up close. Older, tired, her beauty strained by stress. She was visibly pregnant now, her designer dress unable to hide the curve of her belly. I need your help, she said without preamble, sitting down uninvited. I know you and Adrian almost dated. I know you left. I need to know why. I studied her for a long moment. In my first life, she'd been my enemy, the woman who had stolen my fiancé. In this life, she was just another woman, learning too late what Adrian's promises were worth. Why are you asking me? I said carefully. Because he talks about you. Her voice cracked slightly. He says you were different, that you were strong, independent, that you didn't need him, and She pressed a hand to her belly. I need him. I'm having his baby. But he's pulling away, and I don't know how to hold on. The irony was suffocating. She'd won Adrian in my first life by being spontaneous, fun, everything I wasn't. Now she was losing him by being exactly what I'd been, desperate, accommodating, too invested in a man who couldn't be held. You can't hold water in your hands, I said quietly. The tighter you grip, the faster it escapes. So I should just let him go. Her eyes filled with tears. No, I said. You should let yourself go, before you drown trying to save someone who won't save you back. She left crying. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. 2 weeks before the wedding, Adrian appeared at my office. No appointment, no warning, just him in an expensive suit, looking haunted. I called it off, he said. The wedding? Everything. The wedding, the engagement. I told Victoria I can't do it. I set down my pen very slowly. She's pregnant with your child. I know. I'll support the baby, but I can't marry her. He moved closer, his voice dropping. I keep thinking about you, about how different things could have been if you hadn't left. Catherine, we could try again. We're both older now, more mature. No. The word hung in the air between us, simple and absolute. Catherine, you don't want me, I said calmly. You want the version of me that escaped, the one that didn't need you. But that woman exists because she left you. The moment I become yours again, I become the thing you grow bored of. That's not true. It is. I stood, meeting his eyes with 7 years of hard-won clarity. In another life, you promised me forever. You stood at an altar and looked me in the eyes and said I was your future. Then Victoria announced her pregnancy, and you couldn't abandon your promises fast enough. Now history is repeating itself, but this time I'm not the casualty. Don't make Victoria into what you made me. What did I make you? His voice was almost a whisper. Nothing, I said. That was the problem. With you, I was always nothing, something to accommodate your ambitions, your image, your comfort. You don't want a partner. You want a mirror that reflects only the parts of yourself you like. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. Marry Victoria, I continued. Or don't, but leave me out of your crisis of commitment. I'm not your escape route. You've become hard, he said, and it sounded like an accusation. No, I corrected. I've become whole. There's a difference. Adrian did marry Victoria, 3 months late, in a small ceremony with half the guests, but he married her. I heard about it through business channels. His mother was reportedly furious. Victoria was reportedly relieved. I didn't attend. I didn't send a gift. I simply continued building the life I'd chosen, instead of the one that had been chosen for me. 2 years later, my firm had grown into something significant. I'd been featured in business magazines called a rising star in investment management. I'd dated carefully, never seriously, keeping my heart protected behind walls built from past life wounds. Then came the call from Miss Westbrook. Ms. Catherine, she said, her voice as cold and refined as I remembered. I believe we should meet. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown. She was older, harder, her disappointment in her son's choices worn like expensive jewellery. My son made a mistake, she said without preamble. Not marrying you was the worst decision of his life. With respect, Mrs. Westbrook, that's not true. Not marrying me was the best decision he ever made. For both of us. She studied me with sharp eyes. His marriage is failing. Victoria is unsuitable. She's made him common. She has made him human, I corrected. He was always common, Mrs. Westbrook. You just dressed him up in privilege and called it substance. Her face tightened. I'm prepared to offer you a significant business opportunity, a partnership between your firm and Westbrook Real Estate, but there would be expectations about the personal nature of such a partnership. I understood immediately. She was trying to buy me as a replacement wife, a more suitable second chance for her son's failing marriage. No, I said simply. You haven't heard the numbers. I don't need to. I stood, gathering my bag. Mrs. Westbrook, I spent the first 17 years of my life being groomed as a suitable match for your family. I won't spend the rest of it being purchased for the same purpose. Your son made his choice. Let him live with it. And you? She asked, her voice sharp with something almost like respect. What will you live with? Myself, I said, and that's more than enough. 5 years after that meeting, I received a letter. Handwritten, on expensive stationery, forwarded through multiple business addresses before reaching me. It was from Adrian. Catherine, I heard about your engagement. Congratulations! He seems like a good man, better than I was. I've spent years trying to understand where I went wrong, why nothing I built felt right. I think I finally understand. You were supposed to be a placeholder, someone safe, suitable, easy to control. But you became something else entirely. You became the one that got away. Not because I loved you, but because you loved yourself enough to leave. Victoria and I are divorced. It's amicable mostly. We share custody of our daughter. She's beautiful and strong and nothing like me. I hope she grows up to be more like you, someone who knows her worth before someone else tries to define it. I never deserved you, not in the life we almost shared and not in this one. But I wanted you to know that your escape set me free too. It taught me that not all promises should be kept. Some are made from fear, not love. Ours were the latter. I hope you're happy. I hope he knows how lucky he is. I hope you never think of me except as the mistake you avoided making. Forever was a promise I wasn't capable of keeping, but you kept it to yourself, and that might be the only version of forever that matters. Adrian, I read the letter twice, then filed it away in a drawer I never opened, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder of the life I'd left behind. My fiancé, Daniel, a fellow entrepreneur I'd met at a conference, found me staring out the window of our shared apartment. Penny for your thoughts? He asked, wrapping arms around me from behind. Just thinking about promises, I said, and which ones are worth keeping. And? The ones we make to ourselves, I said. Those are the only ones that matter. He kissed my temple, and in that moment I felt nothing but gratitude for the girl I'd been at 17, the one who'd woken up with a second chance and chosen herself over everyone else's expectations. The years continued. I married Daniel. We built a life based on partnership, not performance. Adrian's letters stopped coming. Rumours reached me occasionally. He'd remarried, someone from his social circle, someone his mother approved of. I hoped she made him happy. I hoped he'd learned something from our various incarnations of almost. On my 35th birthday, I stood in the office building I now owned, looking out at the city I'd conquered through nothing but refusal to be diminished. Someone asked me once in an interview about my success. You've achieved so much, the journalist said. What drives you? I thought about the girl in the wedding dress, humiliated at the altar, the girl who died in the rain, unloved and unvalued, the girl who'd woken up with a second chance and seized it with both hands. Revenge, I said, then smiled at her shocked expression. Not against anyone else, against the version of myself that thought she needed permission to exist. The interview went viral. Women wrote me letters sharing their own stories of escape. I became accidentally inspirational, which felt strange and right simultaneously. Adrian sent one final letter after the interview. It was short. You didn't just escape me, you escaped the cage we all built around you. I'm proud of you, even though I have no right to be. Thank you for teaching me that forever isn't a promise, it's a choice. You chose yourself. That took more courage than I ever had. I won't write again, but I'll always remember the girl who said no. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I didn't destroy Adrian. I didn't need to. He was never the villain of my story, just a weak man who'd tried to build his happiness on someone else's diminishment. He'd collapsed under his own contradictions, his inability to know what he wanted until it was no longer available. My victory wasn't revenge. It was rebirth. It was becoming so completely myself that his promises, his forever, his love, his future, became irrelevant compared to my own. Some women wait to be chosen, others walk away and choose themselves. I was the latter, and every morning I woke up next to a partner who valued my strength. Instead of fearing it, I was grateful for the car crash that had given me a second chance to get it right. Not by changing Adrian, not by winning him back, but by understanding that the only promise worth keeping was the one I'd made in my childhood bedroom at 17, staring at my reflection with 7 years of painful future knowledge. I would never again live a life designed by other people's expectations. I would never again accommodate myself into invisibility. I would never again wait for someone to choose me when I could choose myself. Adrian had promised me forever. After Rebirth, I'd let him keep that promise with Victoria, with his second wife, with whoever else he attached his restless need to. I'd watched him regret each choice, not because I'd punished him, but because he'd finally understood what he'd lost. Not me, but the possibility of being with someone strong enough to leave. My forever belonged to me now, and unlike Adrian's promises, I knew how to keep it. I outgrew them all. Every version of myself that had been too small, too accommodating, too afraid to disappoint. I became untouchable not through cruelty, but through clarity. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered.